Hey, we're live. Look at that. Hey, and welcome back. My name is Mark Suter, and I'm filling in for the elite, Elise Burden, who kind of got called away on a kind of important meeting tonight with other co-founder John Cahalan. I'm not sure anybody is in here getting this information now anyways, but I'll share it with you, and probably again later. They got invited to go out to dinner with a guy named Andrew Ko, who works at Amazon. And he's not the guy that packages up the boxes. His name's Frank. This Andrew Ko guy, he's the director of global education. So that's pretty exciting. Hey, Real World Scholars is calling me right now. Should I take it even though I am on the phone? Hey, I started a... Yeah, hi, Mina. I just started the Google Hangout on air. There are 7 viewers here right now. What's up? But I don't know if I can't see their chat, though. Great. Well, okay, we'll send something in early so I can make sure that they are coming into my end, because I'm watching it through a Google Hangouts window. Okay, thanks. Bye. All right, guys. So a lot of you guys are probably starting up your first Ed Corp right now. I wanted to give you a quick little background. I bet even my wife's here, and she's going to be starting an Ed Corp with some 3rd and 4th special needs kids, making chapstick of all things, because it was the one thing they could make that didn't require heating up stuff that would burn the poor kids. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background on my end, tell you what kind of process I went through to get my Ed Corp started, which actually predates Real World Scholars, believe it or not. This is my 4th year doing an entrepreneurial classroom. So 4 years ago, I teach computer tech in a high school classroom. And I had some very articulate, intelligent students that were bored in school because they were high achievers. And I started to recognize something in them that I felt when I was in high school, which is I'm bored and I'm jumping through hoops to try to get out of high school and move on to real life beyond this. And so on a whim, I asked them if they wanted to start an entrepreneurial tech club creating websites. And we did. We started with basic Joomla websites, but the way we actually started was, instead of trying to market to other people, we went to the local Chamber of Commerce, which is a great resource. If you are just starting out as an Ed Corp and you're wondering who are we going to sell to, one of the best things you can do is call up the Chamber of Commerce, pull the heartstrings a little bit, and say, I got all these kids and we're trying to sell this stuff. Would you let us come speak to you guys about what we're doing and see if we can make some, build some social capital, as John likes to describe it as, which is networking. And so they did. They let us come in, and we got our first couple of businesses to let us build them a website. And after doing that for a couple of years, RWS, Real World Scholars, came along, and I went on board with them because they're doing awesome things, and the support structure is there. There's a couple of people that are in the chat area right now, by the way. So while I'm kind of blabbing on about my experience, be putting in your questions there, because they will answer them or I will answer them. And we'll make sure we can get everything. And if they can't answer them, I'm sure Elise will answer them when they're not whining and dining with some fancy pants guy. So I'm actually in the Sheraton Hotel in Columbus, Ohio. So this is not my house here. I'm sitting in the lobby basically. And Mina, if you are listening, I don't see any chat messages, just my own little hello to myself, but maybe I'm on the wrong page. Let me check one thing real quick. Oh, that's good. New window. So we got through the Chamber of Commerce, and that was how we started our marketing. And then we did what we called a marketing blitz, which is where you essentially tell all of the local radio and TV and newspaper. You literally call them up. You write a little press release. Just Google it. I didn't know what I was doing either. How to write a press release, literally. There's like little things in there, little links that'll show you. We wrote a press release. We called up these different places and said, hey, we're doing this great thing with students, entrepreneurship in the classroom, and would you be willing to do a story on us? And about 2/3 of the time, they would say yes. The other times, they would give you kind of the runaround, which is not all a bad thing, because the kids need to understand that it's going to take some perseverance, and they need to be doing something that is worthwhile. So it's not totally bad. So with the Chamber of Commerce and the Marketing Blitz, we had about 6 clients or so, and we made about $7,000 or $8,000 on web design and video production from that. And I had never ran a business before, and my biggest fear was, I had several fears. Number one, what is my administration going to say? Because I kind of started doing this before I really ran it past them, because I thought, well, it's my classroom. I need to do what's best for the student, and that's what I saw was best for the student. And I did run into a little bit of little hesitation from the administrators, because sometimes administrators are very big on the seat time because of the accountability to the state. In various states, they have different laws, but I was able to sell it to the administration. This was my okay, so I've been working with RWS for a little while, but these are the finer points, at least in my experience. Number one is get your administration on board. When an opportunity comes around like RWS and they're like, we're going to give you money and you're going to run a classroom like a business if you so choose. It sounds a little too good to be true, but what I discovered was if you can get your administration on board, it makes it so much easier. They will, the fear is that, well, what is my evaluation? Like in Ohio here, your evaluation is 50% of your, or your, the student's grades, excuse me, is 50% of your evaluation or improvement year over year. And you say, okay, principal, if I'm going to do this, are you going to back me up if we don't see giant leaps and bounds in test scores? And interestingly enough, I had much more engagement from the students who wouldn't typically otherwise be engaged. So that this was high achieving students early on. But I'd like to tell a quick story about one of my students named Tyler, who, Tyler's out of high school now, but I think it's okay then. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the right window to see the live streaming area. Okay. Tyler was a student who was basically a jock, and he had a 2.4 or so GPA, and I kind of thought this is a class clown kind of guy. And I was, at the time, working with basically your 4.0 pre-med type students. Not exclusively, it's just that's who was attracted to this initially. But what was interesting is once Tyler got involved, I started to see how intelligent that guy actually was. I actually discovered that playing video games with him one time, believe it or not, because of all the strategy and thinking and how quick he was able to make decisions that were the right decisions. So I started giving him responsibility, and I trusted him. And you know what? That is what turned his academic life and, dare I say, other parts of his life around, was somebody gave him some responsibility and trusted him to do the right thing without hawking over his shoulder to make sure that he was doing the right thing. And for instance, after he learned the web design stuff, I said, Tyler, we got a great big project coming up. It's gonna bring in $3,000 for our tiny, what we used to call a tech club, which we now call a business because it is an ed corp business. Plus, tech club doesn't sound very professional when you're going to Chamber of Commerce trying to get business. So I told Tyler, you're going to be the project lead on this. Sorry about the extra noise. There's we're in the lobby, right? Sorry. Yeah, what was I saying? The responsibility was put on his shoulders to bring in this $3,000 project, and he didn't know the ins and outs of web design, but just the mere fact that I trusted him was, I guess, the point that I'm trying to make. And he did a great job on it. The client would come in, and Tyler would sit with him. He would do the emails, he would do the phone calls, and it was a little rocky. It was a little awkward at times. But come to find out, he wrote me an email when he graduated and said, you know, and I didn't even know this. He said, I'm going to go major in computer science now, which I don't know why he didn't tell me, but he decided to do that, all because of the confidence that was instilled in him from these projects, that project specifically. And he said there was one time the client came in, which he had scheduled, by the way, and I was doing something else. Evidently, I had left the room. I don't remember this, but I left the room to go do something and came back, and the client had left or something. And I was like, hey, how'd it go? And the fact that I just left him there was a powerful message to him that I trusted him and had every faith in the world that he would run the consult, the meeting, just fine. He would do great. And if there was any questions, he would figure it out. And evidently that made a big impression on him, because that's what he brought up in an email they wrote me when he graduated. And I obviously I did leave the room without consideration of, oh, I better make sure that I'm coaching Tyler as we go, because he had been doing the same consult for a little while, and I would be in the room. But the very first time I sat in on the meeting and sort of did this, you know, the zone of proximal development that we like to talk about, I like to shift that pretty fast. So the first time I'll sit with you and I'll throw you softballs when you're consulting with a client or a customer. The second one, whether it's a phone call or an in-person one, I'm going to expect the student to do 90% of it, if not all of it, on the second one. And after that, you're on your own, kid, because if you don't push them out of the nest, they're not going to learn how to fly. And I don't think it's coincidence that all of a sudden they buck up and they do it. And it's been very encouraging to me that there's still ways to get students motivated. And I think this entrepreneurship in the classroom really taps into that. And I still don't see a chat, by the way, Mina. I don't even know if I'm at the right place anymore, but right now I'm doing a monologue. I want to talk more about our structure and how we do our tech club portion. So Mina, if you just text me, I'll just assume that that is sufficient for the questions. How about that? That'll work. It's like a chat room on my phone. So those of you that are starting your ed corps, this might help. The last 6 years I've been at the same school, previous 6 years. This fall, I started a new district completely. I eventually left because I believe so strongly in the way that this entrepreneurship in the classroom works, and that the administration didn't necessarily. I left my position and said I'm going to find a school that really accepts and embraces this, because I believe in it that strongly. But the helpful part potentially to you is I'm starting over completely brand new this year. I don't know any of the kids. There's about 200 kids in a class, and at my previous school there was maybe 40 in a class. And I told my previous students and my wife, hi Andrea, that I was going to wait the entire first semester before I started up an ed corp. I made it 8 days. 8 days. On the 8th day, I called a meeting to anybody willing to meet and talk about entrepreneurship, and about 20 kids came. And I said, you know what? I'd like to invite you to be a member of a new family. I want to start a small business within this classroom, and I want you to be a part of it. And it was real. It was very heartfelt, because I think it is more of a family-like environment, because you start to trust and have some sort of camaraderie with each other. when you go through something with somebody, even if it's just the ambiguous mess of starting an ed corp where everything feels non-concrete and we're very used to the concrete, the easy to measure tests, etc., it can be a little disorienting to venture out into a peninsula and not know if there's any support there. Well, there is a lot of support. I know the RWS folks will support you. They have people that will answer the phones. But I mean community and principal support. I think a lot of teachers would be surprised how much support there really is there. If you go to a parent-teacher night and you say, hey, we're thinking about doing this crazy thing of starting a business instead of using the textbook to learn A, B, and C. I did that at parent night a few weeks ago, and every single parent was like, oh, thank God you're going to do something. And that's not saying that other subjects are not useful. It's just they remember school, and it can get a bit dry depending on the teacher. I know. But anyway, so this new school, Elida High School in Ohio, we've got a bunch of kids coming in now, and I don't have them trained in anything. And so now my problem is, what am I going to do with all these kids? I'm not even quite sure we're going to be able to do websites because they don't know what they're doing and they're hungry to do something. So what do I do with them? So my strategy was, let's pick something fast and easy that requires very little training to get done. And so what I did was say, let's get a photo scanner. Let's go get the Epson Photo Fast, F-O-T-O Fast. It scans like a photo per second. If you've ever seen a money counter, it's like at a 45-degree angle, shoom, 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 and we're going to digitize people's photos. We're going to have them drop them off, and we're going to charge them anywhere from 30 to 50 cents per photo to scan them. And we're going to upload them to the cloud, send them the link after they've paid us through our website, which we don't have a company name yet, by the way. I'll get to that. And that's what we're going to do first. This is $650 scanners. So we basically spent our seed money on something that may or may not make us money. Now, a quick note about that. If you're not sure what your product's going to be, do look up brainstorming activities. Don't get caught up in the everything has to be a democratic decision, because that's how we end up with but think of something simple. But what was I going to say? Do some market testing. So when we had the idea, I actually had the idea because I wanted to see photos of when I was a little kid and share them with friends or other family, and I didn't have digital versions of them. And I thought, well, we got all these things in the attic that are just collected dust and melting on hot days. So it came out of a need, and I thought, well, why don't we do that as part of the business? And so I told all of the students at Elida High School that were coming to these entrepreneurial meetings, I said, go home, talk to your mother and father and grandparents and aunts and uncles and ask them if they would pay 30 to 50 cents per photo, see if they would use this. And 19 out of the 20 kids came back and reported, yes, absolutely, they would do it. They would start using it right away. Now, eventually, we need to move beyond mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, but there are services online where people ship you the photos, and you can keep going and perpetuating beyond just the local. That should always kind of be the view as almost a global marketplace. If the only people that are going to buy it are mom and dad, then they're really not buying the product because they really want it or need it. It's because it's like the little kid selling candy bars. Then at that point, authentic. In my opinion, it's close. It is authentic. I'll grant that, but it is not as challenging as coming up and creating something that is truly authentic and demanded or desired by audience that you don't know, and are able to market to and appeal to. So when you have limitations and restrictions like that, you'll find that creativity actually increases, which that's what I have found anyways. Mina says, yep. I'll say, yep, do. Okay. So that's what's going on in that. I have a blog going on that's documenting what it's like starting up my business in my school on my website on marksuter.com. And I'm just being very frank that, look, it's being very messy. It's a messy experience. And I don't always know what to do or who to ask what questions to ask in the first place. But that's where things like Nepris come in. Nepris.com, if you haven't used this, you're missing out. It is so easy. The Nepris people are so good. I think of it like Craigslist, except I'm only listing to professionals. Craigslist kind of makes it sound kind of shady. It's not. These people are really good. Just 2 weeks ago, I put out there, my students and I are starting an entrepreneurial company, but student-ran company, and we don't know what to call our company. We're really struggling with this and making a logo and that kind of stuff. And a guy picked it up 2 or 3 days later, and then a week after posting, we had the session with him. It's basically a Skype session, but it's on their platform. And he had my questions ahead of time from the original posting, what things I wanted to learn out of the session, et cetera. And so this guy that had started a game design company Skyped with us and had really good ideas. It's recorded, so students can go look at it later. They can blur the students' faces out in some sort of magicry or post-production or something, so that it's posted online then, so you can actually sit with the students and have a conversation and forget it's being recorded and just have an authentic experience with the guy, gal, which is so helpful. I've done several of these now, and whenever you feel like, oh, I don't know what to do, should we do this product, that product, this tagline, this commercial, all those questions, you don't have to know the answer to. It doesn't matter. You just need to know where to go, which is Nepris. Even if your question is, what questions do I ask? You just put out there, starting a student-ran business, and we don't know what questions to ask. I am sure they will pair you up with somebody. At least in my experience, it has worked out flawlessly, and I have nothing to gain by endorsing them, because I'm going to keep using it anyways. So, so that was extremely helpful. Are there questions, Mina? I don't want to over monologue. I mean, I really enjoy telling the story, though. I really enjoy telling the structure of how we go to. So let me go down that route. Rocket Tech, which was the company I was running at my former school, which, interestingly enough, this is our business card. We got them on Vistaprint. We didn't go the free route because we actually wanted to customize the front and back. I would really suggest use the area on the back. It's like a few bucks extra, and actually put my little photo on there along with the win-win-win solutions. Talks about how students win, how the school wins, and how businesses win, because we're trying to create situations that the business knows it's great PR for them. The students get great experience. So there's the feel-good, philanthropic part of it. And then the school as a whole wins because we end up reinvesting in our own company and getting new equipment, etc. But anyways, highly recommend getting on that business card thing as soon as you get your company. And and the kids love that, by the way. You hand them a stack of business cards. You could even design it so there's a blank there where they write their name in, or order different sets for the different kids, however you want to do it. I wouldn't do the print your own, but you can if you want. You could put their own names on it if you did it that way, I suppose. But anyways, the structure. Our structure is structured basically like it would be in the real world. When a client comes in and says, I need you to build me a website that can have a fillable form and have features A, B, and C, I pick a student who clearly has demonstrated they know WordPress. Now I'm standardizing that finally, by the way. Which I would highly recommend this process. I figured out after all this time, there's a reason that Google has levels 1 and 2 for educators. Microsoft has 2 levels, the Innovative Educator, which you just join their community, and the Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert, which is a accolade I just got this summer, which you apply for, and then it just gets you some interesting opportunities. And even Adobe, if you get Adobe certified in things, they have 2 levels. And so I thought, you know what, that'd probably be a good thing if I mimic that, because these are multi-billion-dollar companies. They probably know what they're doing. So we just kind of mimic things sometimes. So we're going to do a certification. And this applies to every company, because you could have, well, let me tell you what we do. We're doing a WordPress certification. Level 1, you can do the basics. If everything goes well, you know how to install the appropriate things and set it up and run the website. That's level 1. Level 2 would be, not only can you set up WordPress, but you also know how to resize and edit the photos in Photoshop before they go on the website. You know how to troubleshoot the HTML, CSS, and databases if something goes wrong, etc. There's a whole new set of skills for the level 2. So if a client comes in, I can look at my board of certified students and know these are the ones I have to pick from. It is also really nice to be able to say that, or will be nice to say that once I develop it this weekend, that they can't fight over, well, how come they got it and I didn't? Why did they get to do this project and they didn't? I'll say, because you're not certified in it. You have to do all this extra work, which is basically a differentiator. It's separating the ones who really want to do the work and be involved and will do anything to do that and be involved, from the ones that just kind of want to leech and just want to get some sort of perks or get out of class, you know, those kinds of things. And it has surprised me which ones really want to do the extra hard work. In fact, just this last week at the meeting, I said, how many of you, by show of hands, there's 20 kids there again, that's kind of been our number. How many of you want to do the harder stuff with no tangible benefit that's going to take you a lot of extra work and a lot of extra time? And I thought maybe 3 or 4 kids will raise their hands, and those will be my WordPress kids. 19 out of 20 raised their hand. And I thought, oh, this is a problem, but that's a good problem. So that's out of necessity, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. So we decided, and actually a student helped me decide, I said, how are we going to separate the ones that are really good and the ones that might look good but really can't accomplish everything I need them to. So anyway, and in every single project, how to get started. Okay, good question. Let me finish my thought. The project lead, each project has a project lead. That is the one student that is in charge of everything for that project. Now I'm talking websites, so if you're doing like a product and there's, you know, you're manufacturing high volume, this may not apply as much, but you could still follow a similar thing. And this has worked really well. So I assigned Tyler as the project lead. And Tyler knows that he's responsible for communicating all of the phones, emails, and in-person consults with the client. But even when it comes to installing WordPress and stuff like that, he doesn't have to know how to do that. If he's like, Sarah over here is more skilled and I don't feel as comfortable, he can walk over to her and say, client, I gotta have this, and this done by Friday. Will you help me get this done? Well, because I've eliminated the absolute obsession with grades, and I say, screw the grades, everybody gets an A. Now what? And they all just kind of look around. Anyways, yeah, that's a whole nother story. Everybody just gets an A. I don't care anymore. And magic has happened since I said screw the grades, which is not really proper to say. But so Tyler can go to anybody he wants. He can use the internet. He can use Nepris. He can use his colleagues. He can use me. I tell them I am not your teacher. I am maybe your supervisor, but I'm your colleague. So if you need help on what direction to go, I'm willing to help with that. But don't always come to me and say, well, what do I do next? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And if they really need direction, I send them in a direction, but I don't give them the answers. So instead of saying, well, you need to do this and this, I say, well, you know who's really good at this is Alex over there. And so Tyler goes and talks to Alex. And all of a sudden, they become interdependent on one another. And they start to go through this transition of developing as a team and trusting one another and knowing who to talk to, who's helpful, who's not. I mean, as teachers, we kind of already have this stuff figured out, right? You know which teachers you're going to go to for help on something or paperwork or whatever it is. I'm bad at paperwork, so I use that example. But we know who those people are, but it took some practice, trial and error, right? But it's good to learn those skills now and how to pay favors to one another that way. So that's what the project manager does. They're in charge of all of those things. He doesn't even have to build the website at all. He could do absolutely nothing but delegate out if he wants. However, if things don't get done, the photos aren't resized, the website isn't working or doesn't look good, guess who I point the finger at and say, this is all on your shoulders. You go tell the client, this is why it's late, this is why it looks this way, etc. You're talking to them, not me. And when they know that up front, not at the end, don't try to pull that at the end. You got to tell them up front that, look, I'm putting this in your hands and it's on you, not me. Things change. The kids all of a sudden have the ability to do things they would have never been able to do or even wanted to do, for that matter, had you not laid that responsibility on them. And I don't think it's too much to say a similar thing would happen at the younger grades. If you want to talk a little bit about how to get started, do you have a general roadmap you'd recommend? Ooh, good question. And reaching out to community members. So the roadmap to get started, I mean, yeah, you might have a business plan, and I love that. However, I would caution teachers that are doing ed corps to not get caught up in the business plan thing, and really it should be more about experimentation, iterating, talking to community members, talking to, when you have an idea, run it by some people who might actually buy it and get feedback, and observe them. If you make a prototype, don't, for instance, like there's a Wicked Soap Company and Sugar Scrubs and all that kind of stuff. If I was them, and they probably do this already, but just comes to mind that if you're going to make a product like that or make wooden chairs, Adirondack chairs, give it to somebody that would buy it or did buy it and watch them use it and take notes. That's basically what has been done for years, and there's a reason for that, because it works. It doesn't matter what they're saying. Their actions speak a lot louder than words. How they interact with it, what do they have trouble with? What do they not spend much time with that you thought, oh, that was a real cool feature, we thought people would love that. It doesn't matter what you think. You're not the one buying it. I mean, it does matter what you think, but you know what I mean. The customer is almost always right, except when they tell you what they want. In those scenarios, watch what they do. So in how to get started, I would actually recommend a thing called the Business Model Canvas, which I'm going to go to. Business Model Canvas. If you just look that up, there's an entire book on this. But if you go to YouTube and look this up, there's some fun little videos by a company called Strategizer with a Y on the G-Y-Z-E-R, something like that. Theirs is really good. It's basically, it looks like a piece of paper with a bunch of boxes on it. But if you watch the animation, it helps identify all those little pieces and parts of any startup business, but of an ed corp that we have no idea when we're starting out what questions to ask. This is where you get the questions to ask. For instance, and I'm going to pull one up, and if you are following along in the home version of the game, you too can pull up, oh, that one's in Spanish, that's not good. I don't speak Spanish. That's also not good. Okay. Oddly enough, it kind of starts up in the customer relationships, but don't get caught up in the terminology so much, especially, it depends on the age level. But what I'm doing in my classroom currently is we have that giant like paper that comes on the like 4-foot tall rolls. Just tear a big sheet of that up and hang it up with painter's tape. And basically draw this on it, the business model canvas. And that serves as our roadmap. But we use sticky notes, love Post-it notes. 3M. 3M, that started by an accident too, the Post-it note. And I let the students put in what they think is going to be our customer segments. Who are we going to sell this to? Are these to old ladies or males and females ages blank to blank? Like, who is that going to be? And then how are we going to talk to them, or how are we going to communicate with them? Is it going to be all through social media? Is it going to be face-to-face at a little shop, like a physical presence? How are we going to get the products to them, etc. One of the fun ones to talk about with the students, and by the way, make this student-led. I finally have realized that this whole thing works a lot better when I just let go of the whole control freak thing. Well, I'm not really a control freak, but letting go of the thought that, well, I got to have every minute planned. I have to have it all scheduled out. On Monday, we're going to talk about this. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about this. Well, no, I just basically bring up the business model canvas and we just go through it. I mean, you know, at a good pace. But we gotta start selling stuff and making money, because if this is like a startup, it is a startup. You better get going, because you know the world's going to pass you by. The value propositions is one of my favorite topics. That's your, I like to phrase it to questions. Why would someone pick our product or service versus our competition? What do we offer that they don't? So, and you can bring up the example of, well, if you want steak, if we were selling steak, you could say, well, ours is the cheapest, right? Go to Denny's, get the whatever 10-ounce steak, and that's your value proposition, is that it's cheap. Well, you could go to a Morton Steakhouse, and they would advertise it quite differently, you know, based on quality and handcrafted, hand-cut, marbleized, all that kind of stuff. And so then once they understand, oh, value proposition is what makes you so great, is basically the question to ask there. Why would somebody say, well, I'm going to go with company A because blank? Why? Why does the customer care? Key resources, activities, and partners. That would be like your supply chain if you're making a product. For instance, in my case with web design, the key activities is really training and certifications now that I'm finally developing that. And getting all the students to understand that you're not going to get to do the real fun stuff with the clients in my scenario unless you are fairly fluent in what we're trying to do here and trying to sell. Now, don't get me wrong. When we started out, we kind of fibbed a little and we're like, oh yeah, we make professional websites. And then on the side, we're like, does anybody know how to make a website? And it kind of makes me think of Thomas Edison would announce a press conference about an invention that he had done before he would actually accomplish the invention, to force himself to just get it done because it's got to get done. Students know how this works. It's called the night before the paper's due, right? They know how to get in that mode. You can't say they don't know how to do that. They do. But this kind of gets them in that mode a little easier, a little sooner. And for the right reasons, really, not procrastination. Not that I do that. And finally, things like cost structure. I'm looking at the business model canvas here in the bottom left. The cost structure, right? You got to teach students the difference between net and gross. Right? Gross, I like to use the example of, if I had a Gatorade and I said, here, I'll sell you this for $2. And then I say, well, how much money did I make? They're like, well, $2. Well, no. What did it cost me? They're like, well, you can get them at Sam's Club for, I don't know, let's say $1. And then they figure out, okay, so there's expenses. Well, we don't have to rent a building, thank God, because we have the school building. That's our office. But those concepts are fairly easily explainable when you just use easily identifiable examples that relate to them. But those are powerful because then they start using those terms in day-to-day conversation. And it's hilarious to walk into a conversation between a small group of students arguing about our company's value proposition and how our cost structure is not going to allow for that type of sourcing and this type of quality and this and that. And you just kind of smile. You're like, this is amazing. The kids would never have been having this conversation. So as far as, this is awesome. When you elaborate more on student leading and letting them take the reins, social media, brainstorming sessions, and let them choose what motivates them. Oh, yes. Student leading and letting them take the reins. That's just it. Let them have control. And at first, there's going to be actually resistance because the kids are going to, once the teacher identifies, okay, I got to let go, let the students actually lead this. At first, the kids don't want to because they've never been expected to. They have this learned helplessness of, tell me what to do so I can do it for my points. What hoop must I jump through, Mrs. Smith? And they're almost robotic about it. Like, is this for a grade? You know, you get that question. If you want to throw the grades out, I'm not going to criticize you. But letting them, even from the very beginning, with tempered steel, I guess. What I mean is, you might not just say, hey, kids, go outside or in this other area, go name our company. Because you might end up with a name like Cats or something like that. So within reason, you might have to guide it a little bit here and there, but the goal is to make them feel like everything was their idea, because most of the time it actually is when you allow them to. Don't hand feed them with the spoon and say, oh, you're struggling a little? Well, let me give you the answer, or what I think the answer is. Because as soon as you do that, they're going to see that and just keep waiting on you. I believe in the benefits of being stuck. I think that's a wonderful thing. And students get really uncomfortable. I get really uncomfortable until I saw how much students were getting out of it when I allowed them to be stuck. And when they're stuck, I would remind them, look, you got a deadline. You need to come up with such and such. This has got to work. And whoa, what do you know? They came up with something and they made it work. And you know, occasionally they fail, but even that, you still support them through that. And make sure they know that from the beginning that, look, you're going to screw up a lot. I'm going to screw up a lot. If you're okay with me messing up, I'm okay with you messing up. And it's this kind of mutual trust that, look, we're all okay with this. Okay, you sure about this, right? I'm not going to get my toes stepped on if I make a mistake. No, there's no red ink here. Screw that. Let's have some fun, right? There's no grades. Let's do this. So really turning it over to them. From naming the company, what products or services we're going to do, and what questions to ask. If you don't know how to answer those, and the students don't either, and you start to feel really stuck, and you're like, well, he's talking about being stuck, but man, I really feel like we're stuck and I don't know where to go. That's why you have NEPRIS. That's why you have people in the community. You know, I would like to speak, if in my little town of Pandora, Ohio, when I put it out there, hey, I need help with such and such. We don't know what to do with this service or product or what to do. Start asking around. You'd be surprised at how many people have ideas. Some good, some bad. But they're ideas at least before you can get to NEPRIS even. There's always something they could be doing. That's one of the rules in my classroom is you are always learning and being productive. There's no such thing in downtime in here. And as soon as I start to see downtime as a pattern rather than the exception, we're done. This whole thing will not work without it. And then you have to model that as well. So if the kid literally has no idea what to do, they know to go to like typing.com and start typing because they could always improve their typing skills. So there's always that. And I say, I won't give you homework and tests, which honestly, I can't really give homework in a computer science class anyways, but I don't tell them that. Mina, you were asking about on social media and brainstorming sessions. That is one of the things to completely turn over. I use remind.com to get in touch with the kids. Like, we're having a meeting, today's Thursday. We have a meeting tomorrow, and I sent it out yesterday so they know when and where and all that kind of stuff. And the parents can get on there too, of course. Remind.com is great. You probably know that. But when it comes to social media, I actually had a Google form that I put in, what roles would you be interested in doing? And they could check mark multiple boxes or just one or zero. And one of those things was social media. I also had blogging, marketing, like calling up the TV station and asking, hey, we'd like to market or, you know, advertise, that kind of stuff. Even branding, actually, which I think it was Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said branding is what people say about your company when you're not around. That's your brand, because it's what people think about you, honestly. So the people that selected social media I'm turning them loose. I'm going to train them. I'm not going to tell them to cross the street without showing them how to look both ways, kind of thing. But they are going to know what I expect of them. And initially, if I don't have time to look it up and train them, I'm going to say, look up corporate or professional tweeting or how to market on Twitter and read a couple of guides out there. For crying out loud, I am not the one with all the answers. It drives me crazy when the students keep coming out to me and they're like, well, how do I know what to tweet? How do I know what to say? I'm like, I don't know. What do you do at home when you don't know the answer? When you don't know how to beat level 3 on Super Mario 2 because the third plant doesn't have the potion, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Love Super Mario 2. But you basically turn it over to them within reason. You have access to the account too, but a lot of Twitter clients apps will have access to have multiple people on the same account, or you just give them all the password. Not all of them. When I say all, I mean all 2 or 3 of the social media managers, and you tell them what's expected. It's always positive. We're featuring the process itself. If that's part of what you're doing, that's what we're going to do, because I think the parents and community members and anybody's going to be interested in the process itself, because it really is fascinating. And then what we're working on, right? Not just, hey, we sold this, like a car dealership might do. We sold another car. Well, nobody cares about that. What people care about is, hey, we screwed up and here's how we fixed it. You know, that kind of thing. The struggle is really interesting to people outside of your organization as well. Letting them choose what motivates them. I had a student, she would be okay with me sharing this because she blogged about it, named Destiny, who wasn't into the, hey, I'm going to make, she made a website that was like $500 or $600 worth, which is a good chunk of change. And she's like, you know, that's neat and all, but like our company had made enough money. We bought everything we wanted to buy. It wasn't as exciting as it was right at first. And I was like, you know, what really motivates you? What do you want to do when you get out of here? And she's like, well, I want to go into nursing and I want to serve people and stuff like that. I said, so why don't you do that right now? Like, you can donate as much of this money as you want that you're bringing in to any charity you want. Let me check and make sure it's a legit charity. And we started having a conversation about, well, how do you know a good charity from a bad charity? And I suggested that the good charities are the ones where almost all the money goes to the end user. The bad charities are the ones where if you donate $100, only 10 of that, 20 of that actually gets to the end user. And so she researched hard and found a charity she wanted in Columbus that was helping. It's like Make-A-Wish, but like a more regional one. And it was great. She got to help these kids, I don't know, go to a baseball game or something, but it was just a great thing. And that was how she wanted to give back. And shoot, what do we really need the money for? Not nearly as much as what a lot of these charities are doing. And it's interesting to see when the students are faced with that question of at what point do you start giving back? Maybe not right initially, because maybe you're reinvesting a lot of the money back in, but maybe you set a threshold with them and have that discussion with the students. That's still giving them control. You could say on day 1, do we donate a percentage? Or do we wait until we've made $5,000 and then we start donating 10%, and then at 7,000 we'll start donating another percent? Like, you can have that conversation. And that's fine being democratic, because in the end, what does it really matter? Right? It's not like it matters, because the process is the most valuable thing. I tell my students all the time, the least important and least valuable thing that we're going to get out of this whole thing is money. That's probably the least important thing that's going to happen, is we're going to get money out of it, the company, the Ed Corp. And then at first they kind of look at you like, what are you talking about? Like, it's all about the dollar bills and all, all that. And it's really not. When you explain to them, it's about the process. Look how much you've learned. Look how far you've come in all these concepts you understand. You have an entrepreneurial spirit, which doesn't mean you're going to go start a small business. It has nothing to do with that. It's more they feel empowered to do things that they're really passionate about and really want to investigate. And when something's tricky or hard, they don't immediately shut down and wait for an answer. That's one of the most valuable things out of this whole thing, is they feel like they can do it again. You know that feeling when you're really little and you're playing in the sandbox, or you're on the monkey bars and you're like, oh, I might be able to make, skip a rung and make it to the second one. And when you're little, you have that confidence, like, yes, I can do this, like Anna and Frozen, like I was born ready. And then you just go for it and you do it. And if you fall down, you laugh or cry if you break your arm, but you have that mentality that you can do it. And passing that along to the kids, you can't teach that and be like, you know what, today we're going to read about believing in yourself. It doesn't work that way. They have to experience it. That's why it's called experiential learning. Wow, tangents are fun. I don't even know if I answered what she was talking about. Brainstorming sessions. I had to look up how to brainstorm. Honestly, I'll be completely. I thought I knew. I was like, that's where y'all get together and like say, hey, anybody got any ideas? And it was like crickets, and then one really bad idea, and then a not as bad idea, and then you end up choosing the not as bad idea, which in the end, that idea kind of sucks. That's not a good brainstorm. There's actually strategies for this. I'm not going to talk about them because I can't recall any of them right now. So just go Google like brainstorming ideas and actually pick out some that you think, wow, that would really result in some good stuff. Oh, sweet. Thanks, Mina. So don't get, what is it called? Too many chefs in the kitchen is one way of saying it, but basically groupthink, I think is what they call it. Where one person kind of leans, they're like, I kind of like that. And then other people feel like, well, I can't disagree now because so-and-so likes it and popular Jane likes it, and that kind of thing. That's a bad way to go. You end up with a bad company name, which is actually what, like I said earlier, our whole Nepris call was about just naming our company. The school name, the school mascot, avoiding them all. I've nixed all of them. And I know that sounds like I'm not letting the students lead, but after I explained to them that, yes, one of our selling points might be, look, we're a school, you should do business with us. I explained to them that maybe if that's their main motivation is, hey, the student gets something out of this. I mean, I want to be able to market to people who don't even know we're a school. I want us to be that good that people hear our company name and they're like, oh, I saw a website they did, or I saw a product that I got, or some so-and-so got, and it was really nice. Like, who is that? Like, where's that company from? And then be surprised when they hear, oh, that's a group of middle school or high school or whatever grade you're teaching. That's when you're really doing a good job, is they have no idea that you're even not at like a, incorporated company. So I nixed a lot of those ideas because I want them to start thinking beyond that. And again, when you have restrictions, that actually fosters creativity. So I used to think, well, I don't want to put too many restrictions on you. Having a wide open, clean slate, that's the best way to go. Actually, that's the kiss of death. I finally tell my students in Rocketech, and even now, I tell them, when you meet with a client, you do not walk away, or you don't let the meeting end if the last thing, or one of the last things they said is, well, we'll just give you creative freedom. You can do what you want with it. No, that's code for, we don't know what we want, so we're going to have you iterate 6 designs and find something wrong with each one of them, and at the end of it, we're no closer to a solution than when we started. That's what creative freedom means. Look it up. It's in the dictionary. No, a designer told me that once. And it's true, because we've had clients tell us that, and it's horrible. And so I finally told the students, tell the client that, you know what, creative freedom is one of the worst things that you could give me right now. I need to know what you want, because that makes them commit to it. Anything having to do with design, whether it's your business card or anything else, look at a lot of business cards. I actually keep business cards. When I meet people and they give me a business card, I keep the ones I really like and I show them to my students, and we talk about the design, and it's just fun having those everyday conversations, because they start to see things in their everyday lives. They'll come in and say, oh, I saw the papyrus font. It's the Edible Arrangements logo. And my wife, blames me for ruining movies because now she looks at like the fonts of the titles, and we talk about these things. I'm like, oh, did you see that logo? That was horrible, or that was amazing, you know, that kind of stuff. So you model the behaviors you expect out of your students. That creative playfulness that is really hard work, making it fun. Like, do you remember playing when you were younger and you would come in sweating and you burned like 18,000 calories and you can hardly move and you're all skinned up and you're like, man, that was fun. I want to do that again tomorrow. Like, that's the environment I want to create for these kids. And EdCorp is a great way to go for that, because they can feel like that again when they trust you and you trust them. If you want to look up one of my thought leaders, I guess you would call the guy I listen to his books on tape, I guess it'd be on MP3, is Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. His book, Leaders Eat Last and Start With Why. The Start With Why, if some of you have heard of this before, the Golden Circle. I'll just briefly kind of butcher how he does it, but basically really innovative, visionary companies can not just tell you what they do and how they do it, but they can actually tell you why their company does things the way they do. And he uses the example of Apple, but I demand that that's going to be one of the prerequisites for all the certifications is going to be, why are we doing it this way? Why does our company even exist? And all of those whys, they need to be able to answer to that, because it's almost a primal thing that if you don't feel like you have purpose, where's the community? Where is the that sense of camaraderie, that we're all in this together, right? Athletics, if you ever did team athletics, you know what team chemistry is, quote unquote. Well, that is when the team trusts each other. That's team chemistry. It's not about you didn't lie to someone, that kind of thing. Well, it is, but it's about the trust level. And you have to establish that with the students. I would rather spend, in fact, I did and have been spending a lot of time getting to know my students, the ones I'm going to be working with, because I want to know what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, how they think, how they learn best. I mean, it's how we're taught, as we should be taught as teachers anyways, is personalizing it and really knowing your learner, but it's also building that team and do team builders. We're playing a game called Snake Oil, which is where you get like, it's kind of like apples to apples, except you're like a carny type salesman type thing, and you pick 2 cards out of your hand that have no related word, and then you have to make up a product and pitch it like an elevator pitch. Oh my gosh, I keep going on tangents. I'm so sorry. Well, we've been going for an hour. Holy crap, I've been talking a lot. Okay, time to start wrapping up. Got it. All right, look up Simon Sinek. Last thing I'll say is you always hear the saying, it's not the journey, it's the destination. I never really appreciated that until I stopped and looked around and investigated the process itself. And so just enjoy the process. Every time you start to feel like, oh, we need to be moving faster, making more money, making better this and that, and all the stress that starts to creep up when you're trying to actually do an EdCorp thing, is relax. I mean, keep it intense, but make it a fun intense, not a derogatory intense. Keep the energy level up, and the kids will reflect that right back, and it'll actually make you more energetic. It's the highlight of what I do day to day is the EdCorp side, and I integrate it as much as possible into all my classes, multimedia stuff. So thanks for letting me fill in for Elise. For those of you that didn't hear right at the beginning, the reason she's not here is she got to go out to dinner with other co-founder John Cahalan. They went out with, I think it's John Coe. No, Doug Coe. I don't know. His last name's K-O, Coe. And he is the global education guy for Amazon. So big things are happening. We got to do a little presentation thing with some of the state people at the Ohio Department of Education today, right? So hopefully we'll start getting some ed corps around Ohio. And if you're from Ohio, let's connect on like Twitter or something. I'm Garlic Suitor. I don't tweet a lot, but when I do, it's just gold, right? Not really. But thanks for coming in. I sure appreciate it. And I know they're having a good time eating and making great connections to keep building this community. And I love being a part of this because I feel like with all of you guys, it's kind of a big community thing, and we're all trying this really alternative thing together. So, honey, I'll be home in a few hours. I got to drive home. It's a couple-hour drive, but see you soon. I hope the kids are in bed. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later. If I can figure out how to close this, that'd be great. Okay.